All right, welcome back. This is day 2 of half angles. So we kind of break this into two pieces. It does get a little long sometimes. Today, it's really just about understanding where you are and dealing with these things when you're given a value and how we can create our answer given that value. So first thing here, we're just kind of give you this idea of where we are in terms of these things. If we start with this idea of an interval for x, and we start at 0, and our interval is between that and pi over 2, meaning we're in the first quadrant. Well, if we take half of an interval from this, we still get 0 for this part. Oops. But over here, we're going to end up taking half of our original x angle. Well, now we're going to end up being at pi over 4, which puts us in the first quadrant. So if we start in the first quadrant, we take half angle, then we're going to be in the first quadrant somewhere between 0 and pi over 4. In quadrant 2, which means we start at pi over 2, and we go until pi. Well, if we do pi over 2, now we're saying that we're going to be at pi over 4, and our x angle divided by 2 is now going to put us at pi over 2. So now what is it saying? Well, it's still saying we're in Q1. So if we're in the second quadrant, we take half the angle, we're still going to be in quadrant 1. That's not going to change. In terms of this, we're going to be somewhere between pi over 4 and pi over 2 if we start out in quadrant 2. And that makes sense if we just think about it in degree terms. If I say 100 degrees, then half that is 50 degrees. Well, that's bigger than 45 degrees, so we are in between pi over 4 and pi over 2. If we start in pi in the third quadrant, well, then that's everything from pi to 3 pi over 2. And when we take half angles of those, then we're talking about everything from pi over 2 until we get to 3 pi over 4. Well, that puts us in the second quadrant. And then the last one, if we start at 3 pi over 2 and we go until we get to 2 pi, well, then that's giving us this idea then that we are going to be everything from 3 pi over 4. Our half angle is going to have to put us in those areas, and we're going to end up being at pi. Well, that gives you the idea that we're still in quadrant 2. So if we're in quadrant 4 and we take half the angle, we should end up there. And that makes sense. If we just take a whole circle 360 degrees and divide it by 2, we're at 180. So anywhere in the fourth quadrant puts us in the second half of the second quadrant. Therefore, if x is in the quadrant 1 or 2, and then x over 2 will be in Q1. And if x is in 3 or 4 and x over 2, we're going to be in Q2. This is true for all angles between 0 and 2 pi. Now, example number 5. Given that cosine A is 12 over 13 and A is in the first quadrant, they want us to find these three things: cosine of A over 2, sine of A over 2, and tangent of A over 2. The thing that they're telling you to do is that you should draw a picture. We're in quadrant 1, so you should have a picture that's looking something like this, and here's 12 and here's 13. And we could do the math here. This is going to be 13 squared minus 12 squared, 169 minus 144, that's 25. Or you can just remember this is a 5, 12, 13. That's one of the main ones that get used a lot. In terms of that, this tells us what we're at in terms of our angle measure, and now it's saying that the cosine at that, this A over 2 situation, well, that means we're going to have the following. We're going to have something that says this half angle, it says we're in Q1, so it's positive. This is going to be 1 plus. This is going to be a cosine at this angle measure, which was 12 over 13. So we are at 12 over 13, and all that's being divided by 2. So we got to do this math. I'm going to take a couple of shortcuts here just so that we understand it. It's 13 over 13 here. So that's going to make this 13 over 13 plus 12 over 13 over 2. Simplify that down. We're going to get 25 over 26 divided by 2. Sorry, not 26. Over 13 divided by 2, which gives us this idea here that we're going to have, keep thinking, sorry, this is going to be square root of 25 over 26. That means break this in two, that's 25 over the square root of 26. That's going to make this 5 over square root of 26. And then when you rationalize, you're going to get 5 root 26 over 26. And here would be the answer to the first part of it. Hopefully we see that that's the case. Then they want us to do the sine value. So sine, same idea here. Sine at this value is 5 over 13, and this is going to be 1. Actually, a sine, we're still using cosine though. It's going to still be the 12, but now it's a minus. So now it's 1 minus this over 2. That makes this 13 over 13 minus 12 over 13 over 2. That makes this square root of 1 over 13 over 2, which makes it the square root of 1 over 26, which is going to make this the square root of 1 over the square root of 26, 1 over the square root of 26. This is 26, root 26 over 26. That is the answer to the second part of this. Now, tangent at pi at a over 2. I'm going to do it this way, but one of the other things that we can kind of think about here is what is really tangent, and we'll talk about that in a second. But using the formula here, so using the formula, it's saying this is going to be, so I'll do it both ways, that way we can actually see this. Using the formula here, it's 1 minus cosine at this one, which is 12 over 13, over the sine at the same thing, which is 5 over 13. And then doing the work here, you're going to get 13 over 13 minus 12 over 13. That's all over 5 over 13. This is going to be 1 over 13, and we're going to multiply by the inverse of 13 over this. These go away. You're left with 1/5. Now, that's one way to do this. The other way is to kind of understand, I already know what cosine and sine are at these two functions, and tangent is really sine over cosine. So we could just take sine, which was root 26 over 26, and we're dividing that by 5 root 26 over 26. So we're going to invert and multiply. This is root 26 over 26. We're going to multiply that by 26 over 5 root 26. Well, that goes away, that goes away, this goes away, this goes away. You're left with 1/5. Same idea. Once you know cosine and sine, you really shouldn't have to use the formula for tangent, and you're not required to. You can do it either way. Kind of up to you. Hopefully this makes sense in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here. So let's move on to this next part. Let me get a different color so we can... All right, the next part of this is just saying they want you to find all of the following. So they're saying sine of A is equal to negative 12 over 13, and A is in the third quadrant. Sorry, I'm just looking at something here so that I can check this out. A is in the third quadrant. They want you to find the following: sine, cosine, tangent. Well, first of all, if we're in the third quadrant, then this answer is negative. Third quadrant, this answer is negative. This answer is positive. So I'm just making sure I know where I'm at and what I need to do for each one of these. All right, real quick before we go back here, we're in the third quadrant, but when you take half the angle when you're in the third quadrant, you do need to understand you're in the second quadrant. That makes sine a positive here. Cosine, that's still going to be negative. Tangent, on the other hand, in the second quadrant should give us a negative answer. So that's what we're kind of going to work through. So let's try this out, see how this goes. First of all, draw a picture. So I'm going to just draw a real quick picture here. We're in the third quadrant. Here's negative 12. This is 13. Remember, it's from this angle. Sine, that means this is 5, and it's negative for the x value here. So this first one should say the following. It should say square root of, and this is going to be a positive answer. This is going to be 1 minus, this is going to be negative 5 over 13. Let me write that a little better. Negative 5 over 13. And we're going to divide all that by 2. I'm going to take some shortcuts here just to get to the answer. We're going to add this because it's a negative negative, and it's 13 over 13. So this is going to be 18 over 13. Can't write today. All of that over 2, which means this is going to end up being the square root of 18 over 26. We're going to simplify that down. So square root of 18 over the square root of 26. We're going to take 9 out, so this is going to be 3 root 2 over the square root of 26. And then we got to do a little more work here to kind of fashion it out. Understand that I could combine these two, make this, the 2's go away. I should have done that right here. So sorry for the erasing, but it'll be easier in the long run if you understand that you could simplify this by saying this is the square root of 9 over 13. That means the square root of 9 over the square root of 13. That makes this 3 over root 13, which makes this 3 root 13 over 13. And here would be our answer to the first one, 3 root 13 over 13. The second one, cosine, it's all kind of the same math. The only difference is the first part of this, which the first part of this is going to say 1 plus, and then cosine, again, this is going to be minus, and all that's over 2. So I'm going to probably do this one a little quicker. Now I'm going to subtract instead of add, so 13 minus 5 is 8. 8 over 13, which makes this the square root of 8 over 26. Simplify that, you're going to get 4 over 13. That makes this 2 over the square root of 13, which then makes this 2 root 13 over 13. And this one is negative. Should have been negative at the beginning because cosine is negative, so we know that that one's going to be negative. And then our tangent, we're taking sine and dividing by cosine. So we're taking 3 root 13 and we're going to divide by 13, and we're going to multiply that by the inverse of this one. So it's going to be negative 13 over 2 root 13. 13s are going to cancel. The root 13s are going to cancel. And we're going to be left with negative 3 over 2. And that's going to be the answer to the tangent part of this. So hopefully we see that that's the case. Here were our 3 answers to this one. Notice we did come up with a negative answer for this one. So that's really kind of the goal here, is to make sure that we come up with the proper answers here in terms of pluses and minuses with all of the things that we're doing. This last one, it says, given that cotangent of A is negative 3 and A is in the fourth quadrant, find the tangent of A over 2. So I'm going to give you a second to do that one, and then we'll talk about it. Go ahead and pause the video to do this one. So hopefully you came up with the answer of 3 minus root 10. Let's take a look at this one. So we're in the fourth quadrant in terms of where we're starting. So we have a triangle in the fourth quadrant, and it said that cotangent is negative 3. So that means that tangent is negative 1/3. That's one way to look at this. And tangent would be the sine, or y, over x. So we have something that looks like this. To find this particular thing, it's the Pythagorean theorem. So we're looking for the third length. Well, that would be 3 squared, which is 9, plus 1 squared, which is 1. That's 10, so it's root 10. And now, because we know this is root 10, we're half. Half of this thing would tell us we're in the second quadrant, so our answer has to be negative. And if we look at this, even though it looks maybe like it's a positive, it's really negative, because 3 minus root 10 is 3 point something, which makes that a negative answer. To do this particular math, because remember we're finding tangent here, so we're going to need to do some subtraction in terms of our work. This one is 1 minus cosine over sine, so it would be 1 minus the cosine of this particular function, which is 3 over root 10, and we're dividing that by the sine of this function, which would be negative 1 over root 10. I'm not going to change those or rationalize until I'm done. So first things first, I want to add top and bottom to this, which is going to give me 10, or the root 10 over root 10 minus 3 over root 10, and all of that is over negative 1 over root 10. Combine my fraction, I get root 10 minus 3 over root 10, and I'm going to multiply that by root 10 over negative 1, so I'll just make this negative up here, and that's 1. When you do that, you're going to get rid of your root 10s. You have a negative here, which means the negative 3 is now positive, and the positive root 10 is now negative, and it would all be over 1, which gives you that answer. So hopefully we see how that works. Half angles. A little bit of math in here for some of this, but just algebra, just got to move things around. Hopefully this makes sense. We'll see you in class next time. Bye, guys.